Hola guys, que paso? How's everyone doing? This is Hala Pablo. Thank you for tuning in. Let's look at Bitcoin, and in particular Bitcoin dominance. Guys, I got good news. Well, for some it's good news, for others perhaps not. And the news I have is this: Bitcoin appears to be losing its dominance. Yes, and that can mean only one thing: altcoin season, or the resumption thereof, could be right around the corner. I say right around the corner, maybe in a week or two. We can expect the altcoins to mark back up and regain the lost levels from early December when they rallied quite aggressively in the first couple weeks of December, the first week thereabouts, before the announcement by Powell, Federal Reserve, and everything seemed to tank. Bitcoin tanked, all the risk assets, liquidity. There were major outflows of liquidity from all the risk assets, not just Bitcoin and not just crypto. The entire stock market felt it, and so it's been an interesting few weeks since then, where we've been tracking Bitcoin's dominance. If you've been following my videos, you should see that all this is playing out like we talked about. I have two charts here. I have a Bitcoin dominance market capital chart on the left, and here I have a Bitcoin micro. This is regular price action here, with the volume spread analysis and the Elliott wave. I basically merged Elliott wave and Wyckoff together, along with the volume spread analysis. And so we're seeing my prerogative right now as an analyst is to track the not so much the price action trajectory of Bitcoin, but the dominance, because I'm looking to take long positions in the alts. Many of the alts are poised to mark up. What does that mean? That means that they are in cup and handles, they're in descending wedges, they are hugging support lines, showing signs of accumulation, incremental accumulation by informed interests. And all that means is that they are in, think of a gun with the trigger cocked back, or a spring that is wound up, and it's just waiting for a sign or a stimuli to release it forward with much energy, like a bullet is being held in the chamber. And so many of the alts, I see that as they are in holding patterns, ready to take off. And what are they waiting for? Well, they're waiting for liquidity, ample liquidity, to flow out of Bitcoin and into them. And that happens when Bitcoin loses its dominance. It's basically Bitcoin. Think of a bull laying down in a pasture, being peaceful. The bull hasn't died. The bull hasn't turned into a bear. The bull is still a bull, but it's not mating season, let's say. And so we see with every cyclical market with Bitcoin that it has periods of dominance and periods of passivity. And it goes up and down, up and down. We could see that on the altcoin season index chart like this here. We went over this before. When the line goes above the 75 up here on top, it's altcoin season, which means that altcoin has its dominance, altcoins have their dominance. And if altcoins have their dominance, that means Bitcoin must be in a passive position. So we see the alternation here. These it looks like sound waves, right? All right. And so here we are right here currently. Now this is the season we just had. It was about a week from December 1st to December 8th, where The altcoin dominance went above the 75 mark, indicating altcoin season. And then promptly it went back down here. And here we haven't gone all the way, we haven't retraced, as it were, all the way back down to the 25 line. Now remember, the lower this falls, the more dominant Bitcoin is. So Bitcoin, this has basically stayed mid-channel. And we've seen this occur before. It's not often. Usually after altcoins peak out, they fall back down to total Bitcoin domination beneath the 25. But here we're kind of hanging out mid-channel, and it looks as though we just, this index was at, I think, 47 when I fell asleep last night. And here it is, we have an uptick, and now we're at 51. So it is inching its way back up. Whether or not it'll make it all the way back up and we'll see a resumption of the altcoin season remains to be seen. It is possible. And to kind of get a better grasp on the bias of the dominance, we turn to these two charts to see what Bitcoin is actually doing, what kind of trading pattern it's in, what the wave configuration looks like, and what the play between the candle spread and the volume is showing us. And so in both cases, my bias is that Bitcoin's price action is going to continue on a distribution bias. And so I say that based off of what I'm seeing on both of these charts. Now, notice that this one over here on the dominance, the Bitcoin dominance, the top, we'll call that the buying climax. This area up here, this was in Bitcoin, had its full dominance. As long as Bitcoin is uptrending, it is in a dominant position, so to speak. And then when it falls, the dominance is decreasing. Okay, we understand that, right? And so here, this area here, this white rectangle area, was when we had the altcoin season in early December. See, this is like the 30th of November to basically December 9th. Remember, we talked about that week-long window. That was, coincidentally or not, here when Bitcoin was at its lowest, where I contend that it marked all the way down. We see this zigzag, this 5 impulse going down, ending at the here at the support zone, which I called, if this is the buying climax, well then up here, then down here would be the automatic rally, forming this conclusive pullback. And then we had the secondary test, which in a zigzag, the secondary test is a 3-wave. We see that if you don't know a zigzag. Here's a zigzag correction. Most macro ABC corrections, like what we're seeing right now with Bitcoin correcting from its all-time high, is what's called an ABC correction. So we had the A down wave, and this A wave usually breaks structure, as we've seen. It breaks the wedge as Bitcoin ends on a 5 in that ending diagonal. This comes down through the rising wedge, and then it bottoms out, and then we have the B wave, like a corrective rally. But the B wave fails to come back into structure and break structure. Usually it goes no higher than the 4, as we've seen, and then it has a resumption of the down trend into C. And so the C on a zigzag, it's a 3, it's a 5, 3, 5. The C is usually lower than the A. And so we see that here as it's already played out. Now, if we go to the price, this would be the 5 in that zigzag. The C, the 3-wave, would bring it back up to the macro trend support line here, which is now resistance. It wasn't able to break through, and it came back down. And so we see that and we see that it came up to the 4 wave almost, and we have a mitigation, a double mitigation along the bottom of this support line here. The point is, in this zigzag from an all-time high, notice that the second wave, here, let me see if I can get a brush, the ending of the second 5 wave, remember this is 5, 3, 5, mitigated, these two mitigated, meaning they came back down to retest the support line. This is normal in both accumulation and distribution ranges. We see the secondary test usually, very, very often, coming back down to retest the low line of where the price marked down for the selling climax. And we saw that here. And so we can assume to a safe degree here, and it seems to be looking this way, that on the Bitcoin dominance chart, after we've had this 3 coming up, culminating in this C wave on this ABC on the 3, now for the portion of the macro C, see this would be the A, this would be the bottom of the B, and then the C, remember we looked at the zigzag, the C comes down lower. This is the 5 wave that I have drawn out here hypothetically. So it hasn't played out here, but this is assuming that it does. If Bitcoin continues to lose its dominance, which it looks like, I mean, look at its relation. I mean, even now as we do this video, the dominance is really tanking on it. You see right here this rejection off the anchored VWAP. Now I anchored the VWAP to the peak dominance point. This is the all-time. This is when it was at its all-time high, and we see a conclusive rejection off the anchored VWAP, and so this just kind of confirms the resumption of this final C wave that we looked at in the zigzag coming down, and we can assume that it's going to remitigate the automatic rally point here. Now, what does this mean? This means that when it gets down to this area here, that we could very well see a resumption of the altcoin season. So that's good news. That's good news for us who like to swing altcoins. Many of the altcoins outperform Bitcoin. I see Bitcoin as a store of value. Obviously, Bitcoin is the most important, and that's why a Bitcoin chart when I'm doing my technical analysis is ubiquitous. In my opinion, we always need to have Bitcoin. Our eyes always need to be on the sky, on the sun, as it were, which are Bitcoin. If Bitcoin rises and sets, it determines the day, right? So, and the altcoins are kind of like, the clouds in the sky or something like that. They're not as important, but Bitcoin is always there. It's all seeing, all knowing, and until it changes, all altcoins and the entire crypto market is indexed in some way to Bitcoin's dominance, or vice versa. And so we see now in the price action chart, this is the actual price action chart. We've already went through this. We see the macro ABC correction playing out here, how it broke structure, came back up, couldn't predominate or prevail through the macro trend resistance lines here. We see a big rejection here. This is already mitigated here. Now, what usually plays out on one manifests on the other, because the bias doesn't change, because these are all fractal. These are all in fractal format. It's kind of like in the micro, what happens in the micro manifests in the macro. Think of like you get sick. Think of like someone who gets a flu or gets sick and they get microbes in them, or virions in their system. They begins lobotomizing cells or destroying cells, or however viruses work. At first, you don't feel it on the macro until enough of those cells get destroyed or get lobotomized, and then the signals get sent to the brain, and then you have the reaction like, I'm sick, I have a virus, a viral infection. It's kind of like that. We've already seen this play out here on the micro, and And so in fractal format, what happens on the lower time frames eventually manifest in the higher time frames, like this peak dominance, this 8 hour. See, this is a 30-minute and this is an 8 hour dominance. So the price action has already been mitigated on this new trading range that we formed after we failed to go back into structure. And so that's just another kind of confirmation that this wave here on the dominance is heading in the same direction down to mitigate the support line down here and afford us another altcoin season. Now we look into we go to the price action here, and here, let me get rid of some of these lines. And we look into the volume metrics, and we see as this range is continuing to play out, we're seeing severe, big, I mean, undeniable supply predominance. And not only that, supply building supply, increasing supply in the latter half of this range, which is also confirms a bearish, at least to the short to midterm bias. And we see these series of rising wedges all distributing, culminating in where we are now, and also in a rising wedge with Bitcoin very close to the anchored VWAP. Now, this anchored VWAP was anchored off the preliminary supply zone back at the beginning of this distribution range, way back. And so this range has calculated this VWAP has calculated all this volume and has weighted it all out throughout the entire, this is well before the Trump pump, well before it's reached its all-time high of 108,000. It's calculated all that. It's weighted all the volume since then. And here we are now underneath the macro trend resistance line of this wedge that we broke out of on the downside. And we're having trouble prevailing through it. Just because we sit atop it right now on the 30-minute, it doesn't mean that we're free and clear of this, of the magnetic pull, as it were, of the weighted volume, of the weighted average volume. And so, and plus we're in the confines or the governance of this rising wedge, which is in and of itself bearish. So I'm looking at more downside in this range, perhaps seeing this price come back down into back down to retest these lows of the range as these have. We've had another 5-wave Elliott. I'm not going to count it out, but you could see it, a 5, and then a 3, a 1, 2, 3, and then we may be in store for another zigzag playing out here. And this one could take us all the way back down to mitigate this area here, 92,000, or it could even go lower. Now, if it goes lower, that also plays into the bottom of the C. Remember, again, we have the same sort of thing playing out, the same sort of zigzag, just on different fractals. One on the dominance chart and one on the actual price chart. And if this C could take us all the way down to what we were looking at before, if you've been following my videos, and that's the lower liquidity void of beneath the preliminary support line, which is around the $86,000 price range. And then there consolidate and mark up from there, and that would count as sort of like a deep spring kind of area where those of you who want to buy Bitcoin and hodl Bitcoin, that would be ideal buying opportunity. Anything under 90,000 is, for me at least, it's not financial advice, but it's an aggressive buy, and it's something that I will be doing in conjunction with swinging many of the altcoins. And the altcoins that I'll be swinging, I'll hand pick, and based on their trading patterns, and I put their charts up in my Discord group. I have a very high success rate with altcoin swinging. You could ask anyone who's been in my group or who's in my group presently. will know, this last altcoin season, it's just for that 1 week window. I think we swung, I forget, 14 or 15 alts, every single one of them, between 28 and 30% I made on it. I get out at very conservative numbers. I usually get out at the 618 Fibonacci extension, but that usually nets me about 30% on average, because I get in low. And I scale in at preliminary levels, and I put all that also in my charts, all the levels that I'm getting in at. And so anyway, I'm waiting. I love altcoin season, and I'm waiting for it, but until now I'm keeping an eye on Bitcoin's dominance and its play here upon the anchored VWAP or the ICE. Right now it's kind of jumped the creek, but it hasn't really escaped the haunted forest. And it won't unless it prevails through this macro trend support line. And then I'll be bullish, obviously, on Bitcoin. But even then, I think it would be a bull trap. So I'm looking and waiting for this dominance to continue to fall. And even though the price is marking up within this rising wedge, on the long term, I am bearish. And I think we're going back down to consummate it, as it were, the C wave, the same way it's going to coincide on the dominance on this C wave going down on this final zigzag. And so that's all I have. If you got anything out of this video, like, subscribe. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you guys later. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about all this. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for Thanks for getting me over 1,000. And, I'm just an old dude, who's been doing this stuff for a long time. And I don't edit these videos. I tell it as it is. I don't shill. I do this for myself, and all my swings, I put my own money in. And if you could prosper or profit or learn or anything off that, more power to you. Makes me happy. And so if just continue to check the updates as they come out, subscribe so you don't miss them, and I think you can gain a lot out of this. And so thank you. I'm going to go now, drink more coffee, and I'll keep looking at the charts, and if anything comes up that I think is worthy of letting you all know about, I will let you know by all means. All right, guys, take care. God bless. Have a great day. Bye-bye.